These are the students in our confirmation class, and they're going to read the story of Easter morning for you from John's Gospel.
Early in the morning on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and saw that the stone was moved away from the entrance. She ran at once to Simon Peter and the other disciples, the one Jesus loved, breathlessly panting. They took the master from the tomb. We don't know where they've put him.
Peter and the other disciples left immediately for the tomb. They ran neck and neck. The other disciple got to the tomb first, outrunning Peter. Stooping to look in, he saw the pieces of linen cloth lying there, but he didn't go in. Simon Peter arrived after him, entered the tomb, observed the linen cloths lying there, and the kerchief used to cover his head not lying with the linen cloths but separate, neatly folded by itself. Then the other disciple, the one who had gotten there first, went into the tomb, took one look at the evidence, and believed. No one yet knew from the scripture that he had to rise from the dead. The disciples then went back home.
But Mary stood outside the tomb, weeping. As she wept, she knelt to look into the tomb and saw two angels sitting there, dressed in white, one at the head, the other at the foot where Jesus' body had been laid. They said to her, "Woman, why do you weep?" "They took my master," she said, "and I don't know where they put him." After she said this, she turned away and saw Jesus standing there, but she didn't recognize him.
Jesus spoke to her, "Woman, why do you weep? What are you looking for?" She, thinking that he was the gardener, said, "Mister, if you took him, tell me where you put him so I can care for him." Jesus said, "Mary." Turning to face him, she said in Hebrew, "Rabboni," meaning teacher. Jesus said, "Don't cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go to my brothers and tell them, I ascend to my Father and your Father, my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went, telling the news to the disciples. "I saw the Master," and she told them everything he said to her.
That was really well done. Thank you. At the end of the passage the confirmation class just read for us, Jesus told Mary Magdalene not to cling to him because he had not yet ascended to the Father. In this season of social distancing and self-isolation, you and I can probably relate to the awkward sadness of wanting to reach out to someone and offer them a hug and knowing it's not possible. Things have changed. We seem to be heading into a new normal that we don't yet understand and which will take some time to get used to. After the first Good Friday, Jesus' disciples, they faced a new normal, one without their beloved teacher. They had enjoyed 3 amazing years of traveling with him from village to village, town to town. Along the way, they'd met thousands of people. They'd shared intimate moments with their teacher and friend. They'd grown to love and trust him and each other. They'd built a tight-knit community, a family of the heart. And they were learning, slowly, hesitantly, to offer love to people beyond their small, cozy circle. Great things were happening. Everywhere they went, crowds gathered to get a glimpse, hear a word, share in this experience of just being with Jesus. There was an aura of peace, of love, all around their teacher. And in that place, with him, they felt safe. They felt blessed. They might have felt that anything was possible as long as he was there with them. But not everyone was as enthused about Jesus and his message of God's unlimited, unconditional love, a love that burst through the barriers of class and privilege, of race and religion. Jesus, in his quiet, gentle way, was shaking everything up. Powerful people who had much to lose conspired to silence this persuasive, subversive voice that threatened to topple the carefully balanced status quo of the officially sanctioned religion, the puppet kings, and Roman imperial control. So Jesus was arrested on phony charges, subjected to a mock trial, and sentenced to public execution. Jesus was beaten, humiliated, stripped of his clothing, and he was crucified. His closest friends and family watched as his body breathed its last, and they took care of his burial. Then Jesus' followers, most of them, went away and hid. At least one of them denied ever having known him. That part of their lives, it seemed, was over, behind them. They were going to have to sort out what to do next, once they were no longer stuck, frightened behind their closed doors. These days, many of us can relate to feeling stuck behind closed doors. Jesus' companions were paralyzed by grief, by fear, by the shock that comes when you lose a loved one, when your hopes about how life is supposed to go are dashed. Ever get really deep into a good book or a movie or TV show and you kind of lose track of time? And you maybe feel like you want to stay in the story and you kind of hope it'll never end. I remember when the Harry Potter books first were coming out, and everybody in my house, we all read them. Couldn't get through them fast enough. I can remember wanting to go from one book to the next book to the next book with as little break in between as possible. So the spell, the charm, the magic of that imaginary world could go on and on. I have friends who are ardent sports fans. It's been hard for them these days because so much of what they almost live for has been suspended. No games to watch or listen to or read about or talk about. In the old normal, I can remember how some of my friends would follow their favorite team all the way through regular season, into the playoffs if they made it. If their team got eliminated, they'd choose another one to cheer on, if only so they could remain a little while longer in that charged up fan zone. A friend told me once at the end of a series in which his team actually won that it was bittersweet for him. He was thrilled, of course, that his team had come out on top, but he was also sad because that time of heightened excitement was over. There'd be next year, or he could change his focus to another sport, but it wasn't going to be the same. These things we love, they all seem to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Our earthly lives are like that as well. We get reminded these days on a daily, hourly, sometimes minute-by-minute basis that there will come a time for all of us when our earthly life will be over. Those reminders can make what we have right now seem that much more precious. They can remind us that every moment counts. When I was little, and sometimes still as an old guy, there were and there are days when I resist going to sleep. My body may be tired, but I don't want to let go. Eventually, my weary eyes and bones win the argument, and I do sink into that slumber. And I repeat this cycle of day and night and full day all over again. That's the way of things. Day, night, new day, spring and summer, autumn and winter, then spring again. Live, rest, wake up, grow, blossom, wilt and fade, life and death, and new life. Sunrise, the glory of a new day, sunset, and then waiting again for the birth of a new day. There is no going backwards, there's no staying still. The wheel keeps on turning, the cycle continues. We see it a lot this time of year. Think about seeds planted in dark soil in which they decay just enough to break open to allow new growth that will burst upward to find the light of a warm day. Caterpillars cocoon themselves and they'll be transformed and emerge as something new, something that will fly off into the wind. Jesus appeared to Mary Magdalene at the tomb where his body had been laid out for burial. When she realized who he was, she was overjoyed. She wanted to reach out, wanted to hold him tight. He warned her against clinging to him because things were different now. It was a new normal. We don't always feel ready for the new life. We aren't done grieving yet, aren't ready yet to let go of the old. Maybe we just don't want to lay our head down on the pillow and let go of the day that we're in. And left on our own, we might not. We might try to stay awake and not let go. We might try to hold on to the way things were and deny that change and death are the way of things. We might be that way if we were left on our own, and if you and I were in charge. But the Easter story reminds us that we are not left on our own, and that we are not actually in charge. God is in charge of life and death and new life. And God is in charge of the new normal. Jesus appeared again in a new way on that first Easter morning. He showed Mary Magdalene and then a few of his closest friends there was more, so much more to come. Resurrection. It's a weird word. It's not the same as resuscitation or restoration. It's got nothing at all to do with returning things to the way things were before the pain, the death, the grief that happens. It does not contain the promise to freeze time, to keep everything the way it used to be. When it sank in with Jesus' friends that there was a new normal, it startled them out of their sad, stuck place. It energized them. They moved beyond the closed, tight, hidden circle and out from behind their closed doors, and they began sharing the message of new life and of God's love with thousands and thousands more people. A whole new movement, bigger than anything that had happened during Jesus' earthly life, began to grow, and it spread. It was nothing like what any of Jesus' first friends and followers could possibly have imagined. There are signs of the new life possible for us, even as we are currently spending so much time behind our own closed doors. Thinking about the food drive we had here last week at Harrow United Church for the downtown mission in Windsor, so many people responded to the call and drove up and dropped off food here, dropped off cash and check donations. So many people offering kindness to help people they've never even met, may never ever meet. Perhaps in this time when we're all being reminded of our shared vulnerability, there's an opportunity to embrace becoming more kind, more generous, more thoughtful. How wonderful it would be if these qualities became more evident in our new normal. That's the deal with new life. It's not the old life. It's new. It's what comes next, not what's happened before. The Easter story reminds us that God is still with us, offering us the energy and inspiration, the possibility of a new day, of a new normal. And God is in it with us. That's the hope and the promise of our faith. And I love the way it gets expressed in our new creed of the United Church of Canada. We are not alone. We live in God's world. We believe in God, who has created and is creating, who has come in Jesus, the Word made flesh, to reconcile and make new, who works in us and others by the Spirit. We trust in God. We are called to be the church, to celebrate God's presence, to live with respect in creation, to love and serve others, to seek justice and resist evil, to proclaim Jesus, crucified and risen, our judge and our hope. In life, in death, in life beyond death, God is with us. We are not alone. Thanks be to God.